Welcome to my channel. This is Kenlyn and the Astro and Energy Report for the new moon in Virgo happening on September 2nd at 6:55 p.m. Pacific time. So we're going into this period of release and letting go. I wish I didn't have to keep saying that, but here we are peeling off another layer. There's a bunch of things that are happening. So really, this is your own personal new moon transmission. Like you get to make it personal because it's hitting areas of your chart for sure, but it's affecting your whole life. Every part of you is changing and becoming different. And it may be because one thing is the catalyst, but there are so many subtle layers that are asking you to transform. And we have Pluto retrograde back into Capricorn. I just did a separate video on that. 29 degrees Capricorn, just moving back into the world that we knew in 2020. And that world started in 2008. So we're closing out a huge, huge planetary cycle and going into a new cycle. We have Uranus retrograde, we have Neptune retrograde, and Saturn retrograde. So that's the backdrop of this new moon. It's at 11 degrees of Virgo. So the sun and the moon, both 11 degrees, which is the 11th day of the sun in Virgo. When the moon and the sun join, it's a new moon and it's opposing Saturn. So we have some slow energy that's wanting us to stop and take a look and get into the details, but not OCD, but enough details to really understand what our priority is and is not. So I've distilled like 5 things, and I'm going to save the best for last if I can do that. It's exciting. And there's also a beautiful trine coming in September, which I'll talk about on a later video, that could really open some very new doors. So let's hold this new moon and its intensity and its letting go and completion energy. Let's hold it in light that we're moving somewhere that we really need to take off our backpack, which has rocks from the past in it. And we really need to shed it. Maybe you can use the metaphor of the snake shedding its skin. This is a forced shed. Like, we're done. So, a couple themes before we get into the 5 pieces. New moon feels nonlinear, intense, and excellent training for self-mastery. That's kind of after digesting all of the astrology, I was like, this is excellent training for self-mastery. Virgo loves that. So let's get it on. Now, one of the other really beautiful quotes that I read that is perfect for this point in time as we enter into almost the 4th quarter of the year. Day Keeper Journal Astrology said, as looking at 2024, we've had new vistas, we've had convictions and courage, and in some areas, we've had new beginnings. But like all evolutionary switch ups, the promise seems sweeter than the early returns. That resonated so much with me because we did have a lot of hype with 2024. You know, it's an 8-year, it's going to be amazing. We have our sovereignty. I feel like we really felt it at the beginning of the year. And now looking back the last 8 months, it's like, holy shit, it's been hard and it's been lots of change. Even after 2023, how can that even be? Because the universe is honorable and it's titrating the change. Like, imagine if we were to experience all the change at once, like we would basically evaporate. It would be nuclear. We'd be gone. So because we live in a denser human body, and think about it, this Virgo Pisces axis with this new moon and then the full moon eclipse following in Pisces, we're dealing with heaven on earth, the codes of heaven on earth. And so we're really learning how to live on this earth plane better. And that's the promise of humanity, that we can live better. Not that things can be perfect, not that they can always work out, not that we're always conjuring magic, but that we have an inner state, an inner mastery that has us do this thing really differently. And that's one of the caveats I want to put out there that I've been using as a touchstone for myself, that no matter how bad things get and how much change and how much unknown and how much loss or how much like things are not working, you're butting your head, you've worked so hard and you're butting your head up against things and they're not working. There's a touchstone in there. I could either choose to get frustrated and make up a story or go into a highly negative story about the world, about myself, right? Because the mind wants an explanation. So it's whether it blames you or the world or yourself or anything, it doesn't care. It just wants an explanation. But what if the explanation is different? What if you trained your mind? And here's where the self mastery comes in, that you actually go, oh, I'm going to actually listen and pause, and I'm going to tune in, because the only barometer I really have is my authentic self. What do I know is true right now? And that works all the time. And you may not know that much is true right now, but I guarantee you, you know something, because you are connected to the unified field. You're connected to the whole. And when you need to know something, you know it, and you have to tune in for it. So that's going to be one of the 5. Let's start there. That's a beautiful place to start. And by the way, I also did a transmission for each of the aura types: the projector, the manifester, reflector, manifesting generator, and generator, on another video for the month of September. Some really beautiful transmissions came through, and I used the White Light Oracle deck. Okay, so let's begin with that concept of listening. I'm going to call this sovereign listening, and this is principle number 1 for this new moon. Sovereign listening is about listening interior to the self, to the sovereign self, to the holy leader inside, to the holy one inside, and moving from there. Because the mind will get scattered with this Jupiter and Gemini, and it might get panicked. It might go into fear. Pluto moving back into Capricorn might bring up some old things. We might see the government doing things that it did before, and we might think, oh, it's going backward. Who knows what's going to happen? It's crazy. We have an election in the US, for God's sake, and Mercury retrograde and all kinds of stuff happening. So we want to tune in to our innermost self and move from there, which then requires, and here's where the sovereignty piece comes in, that we're not really taking on the opinions of other people. Now, that doesn't mean I don't listen to the opinions of other people and consider them, because I don't like personally being in a vacuum. I like to have other points of view, but they don't get to rise to the level of overriding my own sense of what's right for me. And that's been a lot of my journey in the last 2 years of building the Evolving Sisters Network, hiring people, giving away my power to people who I thought knew more than I did. And what I got to discover is that, yes, they know more than I do tech-wise and all those things, but they really don't know my business, and they don't really know the transmission that I've been given to do the thing that I need to do. So I kind of look at it as that sovereign listening is taking in the information, and then, just like your kidneys, distilling and sifting and sorting through the information and seeing what lands in your embodiment. Because after all, that's the thing that this Virgo energy wants you to have in place for the future. This is our only way of walking into the unknown. And we talked about that with the High Priestess energy from the last full moon, as that lantern lighting our way. Now we're in the darkness, and we have to internalize that lantern as the light within. So it's not like walling off other people, but if other people are having too big of an influence, then you get to recognize, you know what? I am being deeply influenced, and that means I'm giving my power away to you. So I need to shut that off for a moment and tune inward. And when I'm strong enough and clear enough on who I am, I'll come back to the relationship if that's what serves me and our relationship. So I'll leave with you the sentence: spend time in reflection, investigating your own truth. Spend time in reflection, investigating your own truth. That's so good. And don't consider that you know your own truth until you have sat with it enough, because things are revealing themselves in layers. And in fact, we may not know until the full moon the bigger reveal. So we get to stay in the process, which Virgo loves the process right now. All right, let's go on to the second thing, and it's about course correcting energy. Because as we receive these new truths, what's going to happen is we're going to course correct. We're realizing at this point that we're not here to do everything. We're here to do a specific thing that our Dharma really calls us forward. And we may not know what that is, or we may not know what form that's going to take. We might have ideas, but we're not implementing those ideas quite yet. It's maybe not time. Saturn is pushing against that, asking us to really check in. I think that in this place, we're looking for a level of simplicity in our lives. So maybe we've burst the bubble of idealization, like I can do it all, to this place of I don't actually want to do it all. I just want to do what's mine to do. And I think that's actually a beautiful thing that gets us ready for a faster paced world where we're inside regulated to the beat of Mother Earth, which is the Schumann resonance. And we're not going to the beat of AI. Like, let AI go the beat of AI, but we as humans can actually sit back and be human. So this is where that process actually starts. So you're going to find yourself course correcting through reprioritizing. What is no longer serving? What really gets to get on the chopping block? I think that now the energy is less about expanding and more about cleaning up what you already have. And then you're going to go into expansion. I also think this is a very good time to get coaching if you've thought about it, because that listening mechanism really helps when there is another person there to witness your listening and to hear you speak out loud. Some people's authority, they don't even know their right decision unless they hear themselves speak it. And then there's a tone and a resonance to it. And to some degree, that's all of us, but that is a very specific strategy for decision making. So getting a coach can help you work through that. It also can help you course correct and know which things to pare down, to get rid of, to organize in your business. You know, a lot of us are abundant creatrices and we've created all this stuff, but where does it fit? And if we try to make everything fit, we become bloated. So this is the time for a coach to help you streamline your business, streamline your closet, streamline your life, streamline your activities. If you find yourself out of control, crazy busy, it's time to stop and course correct that. So we have sovereign listening, course correcting energy. Yeah, I think excluding what you don't want. It may be hard right now to ascertain what you do want. That's going to come, but you know already what you don't want. So we can go with that. And we are moving forward with priority. This is not stuck energy, by the way. It seems like there's the brakes on for sure, but it's really not stuck energy. It's course correcting energy. So that means that if you're stuck in an area, it could be because the breadcrumbs are somewhere else and you're not seeing it because you are stuck on your pattern or your path that's being reworked. I remember in August, I was talking about planning for the rest of the year, and I was looking at my plan and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really accomplish half of what I set forth in August. But that's okay, because that energy I knew was going to have a different agenda than the agenda that's going to meet out over the next couple of months. And again, we're going to see who we're being at the end of October after the integration period of the eclipse. And I'll get to that in a minute, which is going to support us in new things. So placeholder, new, and eclipse for the end. The third thing I want to say is keep it clean inside. And I've had conversations with people around this. This is a purification moment. So if you're noticing that this Uranus, Mercury, Mars, these oppositions are working you like a pressure cooker, and you're feeling like, I just want to change it up. I want all this to be different. I just want to blow it up. I want to say things out of my mouth and blow it up. Virgo is going to ask you to restrain all of that and think about it. Just be with it, because we really want to keep it clean on the inside and get clear of our priorities and not use the excuse of other people or something outside of us to, if I just handled that, or if they just weren't like this, everything would be okay. Actually, that's not true. We're here. If you're in it, you're working a pattern inside of it. So this Virgo energy is asking you to have some restraint, even though there's a big desire for big self-expression. I think that's coming, and we've got to clear some things out of the way before we are pure in our self-expression and true in our self-expression. So I like the phrase keeping it clean inside. That means to me that when you have hurts and wounds come up, that you actually deal with them in the moment and you do your process. You go to the top of the mountain or get yourself in water or take a bath. You beat a pillow. You do what you have to do to move it through your body. And doing that allows this process of release. It's like breathing. It's like digesting and eliminating. You're not constipated. You're constantly giving it up. Maybe you have a Kali Ma practice and you're feeding her what you no longer want. And I remember that music, that it's like, don't give it to her if you don't mean it. Give it to her if you mean it. So that's the practice we're in right now. And we can take responsibility for any way that we're out of alignment with our own power, or we're blaming others. We're not being responsible for the choices in the life that we have. That's going to bring you back to a place of integrity and purity. And oh my God, what a beautiful place to move forward. The fourth thing, and we're kind of getting to the big mic drop. The fourth thing is to embrace change, because massive change is coming. We're in a period of retrograde. Saturn's going to turn direct at the end of the year, but Jupiter will go retrograde. We have Mars retrograde. So everybody's getting a reboot. Think of it that way. You're getting a reboot. The parts of your consciousness that those planets represent are getting reboots, and they're all following in particular parts of your chart. So even if you don't have a planet there, you have a house, and that house is being ruled by a planet at a certain time. And so you're going to feel the effects. You don't have to know, you can just tune into yourself, but we're getting an entire reboot. Every area of our life. We just had Mercury. I think only Venus is the one not going through it. So, she's like holding it down, but she's gone through her underworld descent. And that is a great segue to number one, or number five, but the number one is the big mic drop of this new moon is that it initiates the eclipse. If you remember from our last eclipse, the new moon is the initiator of the eclipse. Now, the eclipse happens at the full moon in Pisces, opposite this new moon. And the new moon is setting up the stage for what happens in the eclipse energy. So I think we're going to see is that there's a lot of letting go that's starting now. So I think in weird ways, this new moon is functioning like a full moon. And it's saying, yes, plant seeds of change, but you probably don't know what they are. So plant them as intentions when you really dig into your heart, not from your mind of, oh, I want to win the lottery. Like, no, in your heart, what do you have to do in your heart? What's your deepest calling, your deepest offering? That's the kind of thing we want to plant the seeds for. How can I align with that Dharma? How can I live the life of service as an offering to me and to others? How can I bring myself to the table and consider myself as much as I consider others? So those are big, big questions, and they're identity questions, and they're shifting in this evolutionary process because we are unbecoming the old person and becoming a new person, a new community, a new self, like the larger self of which all of us are cells of that larger self. So the eclipse is initiated now, asking us to let go, release. And I don't think we even know all the ways. We're too in it, really. Like this Virgo energy is very much in the trenches. So we're very in it. And we don't quite know all the ways that we need to release. But life is honorable, it's doing us. And we will get the feedback of what we need to release. And I think at the deep level, they're just patterns, they're habits, they're identities. And this is another good reason why to get a coach, because you can't see what you can't see. And our mind tells us a lot of things that we believe. But if you notice, the body still does what it does because it's operating from the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, the inner child, is way more powerful than your mind, right? You can just test it by saying, okay, I have this intention to never blame so-and-so for this. And then you get triggered and you blame them, right? Because that inner subconscious, inner child that hasn't been dealt with is stronger. It wins every time. So those are the kinds of patterns to get really deep with. So if we think of like Pluto and its depth, it's Persephone energy. It wants us to go to the depths and to die to the old self. And I love that because inside of the membership, we're going to do our very first channeled activation of goddess energy, starting with Persephone in this month of September. I think it's going to be incredible. It's a 12-month, every month, a different goddess. And these goddesses are telling Yelena, who is the one who's channeling, she is a divine feminine channel inside of our membership, and they're telling her who wants to come forward. And Persephone wanted to come forward in September. And now when I look at the astrology, I totally see why. It is a letting go, a release, a loss. It's a descent. And so we are consciously descending into our shadow. And that's where Pluto's requiring us, because that Uranian energy will take us to an awakening that's radical and sudden and fast. But we have to do the deep inner work first. Let me see if there's anything else. I mean, yeah, I think the thing that I hope I made clear is that this new moon, we're releasing things we don't even know, but life is in a conversation, so it will show us, and we'll have more visibility around the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse as we see, and we're down here working, we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, working the spreadsheets. I've been on so many spreadsheets lately. It's amazing. And what's going to happen is Pisces, is opening. It's like taking my chin and saying, look up. And I'm like seeing the big picture of where I've been and what's being released. And maybe I'll get inklings of where I'm going. And that's for you too. Maybe we'll get inklings, but it's between now and the end of October that Lena with the Power Path report says that we're going to be different people by the time we've integrated this eclipse. So let's placeholder that. The next 60 days, folks, we have a total transformation. I mean, think about the caterpillar going into the cocoon, spinning the cocoon, dissolving its body, and then these imaginal cells that are the future, they start to take over and multiply, and that forms the butterfly. And then that butterfly has to break out of that cocoon, and it's all slimy and sticky, and it breaks out and it flies. That's our process, but we are in the cocoon once again. If you resist the change, or if you notice in yourself that you are still holding on, and that could be one really beautiful exercise. And I think I'll make that into another video, but take on that if you're holding on to anything, to practice the release, because that is your touchstone. Like, I was looking at layers underneath of what at the root am I holding on to, asking myself, is that what wants to be transformed? So I'll leave you with that question. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you on the next video transmission.